Good morning, everyone, and I'm excited because there's something new happening in my house. And do you know what that new is? It's my plant. It's my basil. Yep, my basil plant started to grow. I got little green plants coming up. Isn't that exciting? I know, the silliest things make me happy. But anyways, it is another sunny day here. It is a gorgeous day. It's warming into the 40s, so that's great. And I will talk to all of you in just a little while. One of the things that I need to do today is make some dog biscuits. And yeah, because the green bean treats are really nice, but sometimes they want something just a little bit more. And I usually make dog treats with peanut butter, you know, with pumpkin and peanut butter and all that stuff. But peanut butter is high calorie, and if you remember, yeah, Mindy really needs to lose a little bit of weight in order to help her arthritis thing going on with her joints. And so, yeah, I could take that advice. But anyways, that's a whole other story. What I'm going to do is I'm going to try a new recipe that I haven't tried before. And this is called a pumpkin and molasses treat. And it takes a half a cup of pumpkin puree, which is just your canned pumpkin, but make sure it is not pumpkin pie filling. Make sure it is pure pumpkin puree. 4 tablespoons of molasses, 4 tablespoons of water, 2 tablespoons of vegetable oil, and I always use olive oil. 2 cups of whole wheat flour, a 1/4 of a teaspoon of baking soda, 1/4 teaspoon baking powder, and a 1/2 to 1 teaspoon of cinnamon, which is totally optional, and you can go any range up to a teaspoon. So the only thing that I do not have exactly is the whole wheat flour. I don't know, do they consider white whole wheat the same as whole wheat? I put it in the oven after you mix it all together at 350, but hey, I will get going on this, and hey, we can see how this is going to turn out. Now, our instructions tell us to, of course, preheat our oven to 350 and to put all of the wet ingredients, the pumpkin, the molasses, the vegetable oil, and the water together. And so I have my water, my oil, and my molasses in here because I wanted to have it all pre-measured out just to make it a little bit easier. And then we're also to have the pumpkin in. And we're just going to mix this together. And I'm sure that you could just do this by hand, but the way my hands are, it can be a little bit difficult, so I've just chosen to use my mixer. Well, that mixed together very quickly and very easily. And the next thing it tells us to do is to add the dry ingredients, the flour, the baking powder, the baking soda, and the cinnamon, and to stir into it until a soft dough forms. Just go ahead and mix that together. That worked very easily. I mean, it is totally not even stuck to the sides of the pan, of the bowl here. It's just totally in a clump. That is really good. So now what we're going to do is we are going to just, it says grab the dough by about a teaspoonful and roll it into balls, which is one of the reasons why I wanted to try this recipe, is because most of the time you have to roll it out and then use a cookie cutter. And this one I am going to be able to make into really small balls. So as you can see, I have chosen to put a piece of parchment paper down on my cookie sheet. And all I'm going to do is roll them in very small balls, like I said, and you just put them down and you just push them flat with a fork. And what's really nice is they really don't stick. So yeah, I'm going to continue to do this. I'm going to put it in my oven, and unfortunately the recipe that I found did not tell me how long they were to bake. So I will let you know how long they're to bake when they come out, and I will talk to you when they're done. I went online and I found that recipe, and it is from Mother Nature Network. So I will have in the description below a printable recipe for you, and have that website on that recipe also. But this is what it looks like, and yeah, it is pretty crisp. So I broke one in half because I wasn't sure just how crisp it was, and it's fairly crisp. I'm afraid that if I were to make it any more crisp, it would just be burnt. So I'm not really sure, but it does cook for up to 25 minutes, and it says until crisp. And these are very crisp. I mean, I cannot like push them together or anything like that, but they're not crisp to the point where, you know, you're gonna hear it when you break it. But it's definitely a lot crispier than any cookie I'd want to eat. But yeah, and let me tell you, you see Missy there? Yeah, she's trying to find the crumbs that I've like dropped in that, because they really like this. But anyways, I hope that you enjoyed this, and I will talk to you in just a little while. For today's devotion, we will be continuing in Matthew chapter 5 and read verses 19 and 20. Whoever therefore breaks one of the least of these commandments and teaches men so shall be called least in the kingdom of heaven. But whoever does and teaches them, he shall be called great in the kingdom of heaven. For I say to you that unless your righteousness exceeds the righteousness of the scribes and Pharisees, you will by no means enter the kingdom of heaven. Now on Friday, we talked about verses 17 and 18. And so now we're just going to continue on with the next two passages. And I do not want you to think that Jesus is taking us back to some kind of obedience to the law as a means of salvation. No, not at all. But he is focusing on the connection between faithful, heartfelt obedience and those who assume they will have a position in the kingdom because of their own set of standards or self-justifying righteousness that could gain them entrance simply because they did some works. You see, the Pharisees were remarkable for making a distinction between the weightier and lighter matters in the law. But God does not allow us the right to say, I'll obey the teaching about murder because that's serious. But his teaching about fornication or adultery, that's not so serious, so it's not that important. If we refuse the Lord's right to rule any of our principles or behavior, we are in fact denying his lordship. Jesus is teaching that no one can earn a place in the kingdom through legalistic self-justification, but only with a sincere obedience to God. Righteousness always accompanies genuine obedience to be worth anything at all. And kingdom righteousness requires what the law itself required, which is a heartfelt obedience characterized by the love of God. To help you understand, Israel had turned from the Lord and from his standard of righteousness to their own. It may have looked like it was God's righteousness, but God's standard had been changed from obedience to just a set of things Israel could do, like items on a checklist. So, what was the righteousness of the scribes and the Pharisees? Well, it was self-justifying righteousness. It was righteousness on human terms. They had watered down God's righteousness. And it wasn't that the Pharisees had made the law more doable, but they had changed the standard by which righteousness was evaluated. They decided what holiness meant, And they decided that keeping the rules was all that was needed to be righteous. They had, in fact, lowered the standard. The standard is, and always has been, God the Father. As Leviticus 19, verse 2 says, you must be holy because I, the Lord, your God, am holy. Jesus was telling his disciples that his followers must have a different kind of righteousness. It must be better than that of the scribes and the Pharisees. It must spring from the heart. And with that, I want to remind you, life happens. Let's enjoy it. And I want you to remember what Jesus told the young lawyer in Matthew 22:37. To love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. Jesus identified this as the greatest commandment. Why? Because if the heart was right, out of it would flow a life that would be pleasing to God. God bless, and I will talk to you tomorrow.